On my 70th birthday, after 18 hours of work, I overheard a devastating secret about my future. The clock struck midnight as George whizzed out of a locked office door, fraying at the edges with exhaustion from yet another grueling shift. It was his 70th birthday, yet he hadn't tasted cake or laughter all day. Instead, he had been shackled to his desk, poring over endless reports in the flickering glow of fluorescent lights. And then, just as the weight of tiredness began to pull him under, he froze. Through the thin wall, muffled voices crept into his ears, igniting his curiosity like kindling in a fire. "Did you hear about what's happening next month?" A voice whispered, coded in urgency. "If they find out, it's all over." The words felt like a lightning bolt, surging through him, sparking something deep within. His heart raced now, pounding like horses in a stampede. This wasn't just idle office chatter, this was a game changer. As he pressed closer to the wall, sweat tinged with anxiety trickled down his back. The first chilling element struck him: the mention of a secret deal. A deal that could turn his world upside down, leaving everything he knew in shambles. "They are watching everyone. In 2 weeks, it'll all come crashing down," the second voice warned, bitter and heavy with suspicion. George's stomach churned as he pictured faces he knew. Friends. Colleagues. Could betrayal hide behind any of those smiles he took for granted? Then came a name, his name. George's breath hitched. He's the one who'll suffer the most if it goes wrong. Every word sliced through him like a hot blade. Who were they? Why were they discussing him? Panic took root, twisting his gut. There was no way he could just walk away from this. Not now. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Time stopped as George stood there, immobile, the shadows casting a long, dark doubt around him. All his years of unwavering dedication, the sacrifices for the company now swirling in a cauldron of uncertainty. His mind raced at 1,000,000 miles per hour. Could he confront them? What if they turned on him? Questions bombarded his thoughts like a relentless storm, and yet, a sliver of resolve ignited within him. He couldn't let this secret snuff out the flames of his future. As the voices faded, leaving behind an echo of dread, George's decision crystallized. He had to uncover what they were plotting, before it unraveled him completely. What awaited him behind the whispers of treachery? Would he be able to piece together the truth before it was too late? The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a constant reminder of George's isolation. He could feel the air thickening with tension around him. Each tick of the clock echoed ominously in the silence. He needed to act fast. The world he had built over decades now dangled precariously on a thread. George slipped down the narrow hallway, heart racing, trying to listen for any trace of the voices he had just encountered. Turning down a corner, he peered into the break room. It was dimly lit, an ugly shade of green cast over empty coffee cups, and the stale smell of yesterday's lunch lingering in the air. The tension wound tighter in his chest. When he finally recognized the figures huddled together at the back table, his breath caught. There they were, Henry and Mark, the two whose fake smiles had always masked ambition and greed, the ones he had inadvertently trusted. They leaned in, whispering like conspirators in a bad thriller. George hesitated. Should he confront them now? Eavesdropping wasn't right. But he felt compelled, his instincts heightening like a predator on the hunt. It's time to take the reins ourselves. We can't keep waiting for him to mess up, Henry said, his voice low and menacing. George's palms turned clammy. They were talking about him. Just the thought that they wanted him out sent a chill through his bones. He had been faithful all these years, but clearly, the loyalty was one-sided. What if he finds out? You know how dangerous that could be. Mark countered, eyes darting around the small room, almost panicked. We need to be careful. How many times had George been one of their confiding ears? Confiding ears that now whispered death sentences to his career. A slow fury began to simmer inside him. They didn't see him as a colleague, but as a target, a pawn in their twisted game. Suddenly, feeling the rush of adrenaline, he closed the gap. As he approached, shoes squeaked against the linoleum floor. Their heads whipped around, eyes wide with surprise and guilt. George swallowed hard and stepped into the light. "What's this about me messing up?" he demanded, voice steady but low. Henry's face paled, the confidence from a moment ago crumbled under George's fierce gaze. Mark fidgeted, blending annoyance with fear he couldn't hide. But what struck George more was the careless disdain flickering in Henry's expression. "Look, George, it's not what it sounds like," Henry stammered, yet his eyes were bored, like a cat toying with a mouse. "I overheard you. You think I want to fight for my place here? You think I'll just let you two decide my fate?" George was surprised at the strength in his own voice, a surge of defiance overcoming the angst that had choked him moments earlier. "We just thought with the way things are going," Mark trailed off, looking to Henry for backup. But instead, he took a step back, almost willing to cower. "What are you planning?" George pressed, his heart thumping so loud in his chest he could barely hear the response. Henry's mouth twisted into a smirk, a dangerous glint in his eye. "Let's just say that when you're gone, there will be opportunities for everybody else. The company is ready for a shake-up." Fear rushed back in waves, crashing against his resolve. George knew he couldn't just back down, but what could he possibly do against their well-laid traps? And as that dreadful insight settled in his mind, he realized this battle was only the beginning. Suddenly, the overhead lights flickered, plunging the room into semi-darkness. Was it a mere malfunction, or a sign of the chaos that threatened to consume him? As the light steadied, George felt a surge of desperation along with an urgent question thrumming in his veins. How far had they already gone to destroy him? And, more importantly, was he prepared to fight fire with fire? In the shadows of that dim break room, George knew he had a choice to make. The walls were closing in. Would he go down quietly? Or would he unleash the storm? And just as determination surged through him, the door swung open. The door crashed against the wall, swinging back on its hinges. It was Karen, the office manager, her face etched with confusion and concern. The sudden intrusion sliced through the tension like a knife. George's heart raced even faster. Would she see the truth in their guilty eyes? "What's going on in here?" her sharp voice demanded. Henry stiffened, planting a fake smile on his lips. "Just having a little chat, Karen." "Right, George." George's mind raced. He could use this distraction, this was his moment. More like a conspiracy, he shot back, his voice low and steady. "Do you think I could be removed just like that?" Karen's brow furrowed as she shifted her gaze between the three men. "What are you talking about?" Without waiting for response, George stepped closer to her, unwavering. "Henry here thinks he can plot my downfall. He and Mark are both in on it." "Really?" Karen's voice dripped with incredulity, her eyes briefly flicking to Henry, who had visibly paled. Can any of you deny it? George looked back at them, his breath quickening. Go on, Henry, tell her that you're not plotting against me. A faint laugh escaped Mark, who was slowly growing bolder. Oh, come on, George. You're making it sound like we're out to get you. It's just business. Business? You think this is business? George's fists clenched at his sides. This is trust betrayed. But the moment hung heavy. The possibility of Karen siding with them loomed over him like a dark cloud. George, if you're serious about this, you need proof, Karen warned, her voice turning serious. Allegations like that could ruin me. He snapped. I know what's at stake. But you think I'll just back down and let them walk over my life? Suddenly, an alarm blared from the far end of the office, echoing against the sterile walls, drowning out their argument. Lights flickered once more, this time more violently, casting unsettling shadows around them. That's the security system, Karen exclaimed, eyes wide. She turned on her heel and rushed toward the door to the hallway. We must evacuate the building. Panic swelled inside George. He felt trapped between an exit and his fate. Wait. I need to know what they planned. From the corner of his eye, he saw Henry sliding a folder into his bag, a folder filled with documents. That simple act sent ice racing down George's spine. George, let us go, Karen urged, but he couldn't take his eyes off Henry. Don't you understand? They have evidence against me. Henry smirked, brandishing a pointy finger. And you'll never see it coming. He had to act fast. With the alarm ringing in the background and chaos escalating, George lunged forward, grabbing the folder just as Henry attempted to pull it away. They struggled, eyes locked in a battle of wills. Let go, you old fool, Henry growled. The lights flickered wildly as if mirroring the conflict. The alarms pierced through the air, demanding attention while the world seemed to tilt around them. Suddenly, in one powerful tug, George ripped the folder from Henry's grasp, sending him stumbling back. As moments stretched into eternity, George's heart pounded in his ears. Danger loomed. What evidence lay awaiting his discovery? Go? He yelled at Karen. The tension, the fight, it was nothing compared to the weight of the secrets in his hands. He could feel everything pivot on this moment. And then he heard it, a muffled voice echoing down the hall, a voice he recognized. Get ready to execute Plan B. George froze. Plan B? What was that? The pieces began to shift violently in his mind. He needed answers. But was he prepared for the truth that awaited? With fear clawing at his sanity, he took a breath and turned toward the still open door. The hallway loomed ahead, shadows dancing wildly as George darted through the door, clutching the folder to his chest like a lifeline. The alarm still shrieked above the chaos, but his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. He squeezed past panicked employees rushing to the exits. Each face registered fear, confusion, while George felt only desperation. He had to know what was really going on. George. Karen's frantic voice pulled him from his thoughts. She was trying to keep up, her heels clicking against the tile. You can't just go off on your own. I have to find out what they are up to. He replied, heart racing. The notes inside the folder could hold everything, maybe even the key to exposing Henry and Mark's betrayal. Do you even know what Plan B is? She shouted, catching up to him at last. No. But I'm going to find out. His voice trembled with a mix of fear and determination. Ahead, the lights flickered again, casting looming shadows along the walls. Just as they reached the break room, George's pulse quickened. The door was ajar, and he could hear murmurs inside a brainstorming session, the kind that felt all too conspiratorial. "Stay here," he hissed. He peeked through the crack in the door. Henry and Mark were inside, huddled over a table scattered with documents. The air was thick with tension, the kind that could slice through steel. "This has to go as planned," Henry was saying firmly. "If he gets a whiff of what we're doing, it's over." "What if he finds that folder?" Mark's voice trembled, but there was a steeliness lacing it. "We can't let him take it to Karen." George's skin prickled at the mention of the folder. They were talking about him, and every word echoed in the room like a warning bell. "I don't care," Henry shot back, frustration spiking in his tone. "We need to take him out, and tonight is the night. No more waiting." The shock of his words hit George like a punch. "Take him out." The walls felt like they were closing in. He pulled back just in time as the door creaked, nearly giving him away. "What are we going to do?" Mark pressed. "Plan B is risky." "Risky is the point. We'll hit him where it hurts. Get the others in line, and when it's done, we cover our tracks." "They'll have no case against us," Henry replied, a chilling resolve lacing his words. George felt his heart plummet. They weren't just plotting, they were plotting his destruction. If he didn't act, he could lose everything he'd worked for. "I need to warn the higher-ups," George whispered to himself, realizing that only a collective voice could drown out their twisted scheme. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from down the hall, and George's pulse quickened. The sound of hurried movement drew closer. "Think it's time to pull the trigger?" A third voice chimed in, smooth as silk. "What? Who the hell are you?" Mark snapped, panic bleating through his words. "Relax," the new voice promised. "I'm here to ensure everything goes smoothly for all of us." George's breath hitched. He had to get the folder to safety and warn someone before it was game over. He glanced at Karen, who was still lurking in the shadows outside the break room, her eyes wide with fear. They were running out of time. Would they make it out of this tangled mess alive? As adrenaline surged, George took a breath and stepped forward, ready to confront the growing conspiracy that threatened to swallow him whole. The thrill of danger pulsed through him. He had to push through. "Enough!" he shouted, bursting into the room. All heads turned toward him, shock painting their expressions. "George!" Henry exclaimed, a mix of surprise and rage flashing across his face. "Let us see what you're really planning." This was it. But would he be prepared for whatever came next? The shocking reveal was just the beginning. "George!" Henry barked, eyes narrowing like a predator spotting a threat. "What are you doing here?" George's heart raced, pounding like a war drum in his chest. He clutched the folder even tighter, feeling the edges dig into his palm. He needed to stand his ground, to show no fear, but a sinking dread clawed at his insides. "I heard everything," he declared, his voice shaking yet defiant. The silence that followed felt electric, crackling with tension. Mark exchanged a nervous glance with Henry, and the newcomer stepped forward, a slow smile creeping across his face, as if he enjoyed the unfolding chaos. "You think you can just waltz in here and confront us?" Henry sneered. "You have no idea what you're up against." "What's in that folder, George?" the stranger asked, his voice smooth yet threatening. "It might be more than you can handle." George started, but the word caught in his throat. The thoughts whirled. Did he really want to reveal what he knew? Could he even trust Karen, who had just kept silently watching from the shadows? "The truth. That's what's in here," he finally retorted, holding the folder out like a shield. Their eyes widened, and for a split second, he saw fear flicker in their expressions. "And I'm not afraid to share it." "Don't you dare," Mark attempted to assert, but George cut him off. "Why? What are you so afraid of?" Henry stepped forward, growing ominously close, his demeanor shifting from surprised aggression to cold calculation. "You still don't understand. This isn't just about you. There are bigger stakes at play. If you don't drop this right now, you won't just lose your job. You could lose your life." George's breath hitched. The weight of those words packed a punch like a heavyweight boxer. It was more than just corporate sabotage, this was personal. His emotions swirled, blurring the lines of loyalty and survival. "Why are you doing this?" he demanded. "I thought we were a team." "Teams are for the weak," Henry spat, the ferocity in his words like a blade. "In this game, it's kill or be killed. Don't you see? There's only one chance left, and you just walked into it." Suddenly, the air shifted, becoming charged as the stranger took a step back, eyeing the door. "We have company," he said, anxiously glancing back. The realization struck George like a lightning bolt. They weren't alone anymore. He turned toward the open door just as a group of suited individuals burst into the break room, their faces carved with urgency. George's heart sank. He recognized them from the boardroom higher-ups who had always overlooked him. "What is happening here?" one of them demanded, their cold authoritative tone slicing through the tension. "Nothing we can't handle," Henry barked defensively, diverting their attention, but it was too late. George could see the wheels turning behind the higher-ups' eyes as they registered the chaos unfolding before them. His pulse raced. This was his moment. He could expose them all, the lies, the threat against his life. "Wait. You need to hear this," he shouted, desperation spilling into his voice as he approached the group, folder still in hand. "George, no." Karen's voice rose in alarm, but he ignored her, locking eyes with the closest executive. It was now or never. Would they hear him out, recognize the gravity of the situation, or be swayed by the manipulation of his would-be enemies? George inhaled deeply, ready to unveil the truth that could alter everything: the conspiracy, the betrayal, and the looming danger. But as he opened his mouth to speak, the lights flickered ominously, plunging the room into darkness. "George!" Karen shouted, panic lacing her tone. What was about to happen next? Would he finally unveil the dark secrets, or would he be swallowed by the very shadows that threatened to engulf him? George felt the temperature drop as darkness enveloped the room, swallowing the faces around him. All he could hear was the frantic rustle of papers and the sound of heavy breathing. His heart pounded like a sledgehammer against his ribs. "Someone get the lights!" barked one of the executives, voice slicing through the tension. Panic filled the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. The absence of light transformed the previously tense standoff into chaos. George clutched the folder tighter, feeling the clammy sweat on his palms. What if they couldn't find the switch? What if his chance to expose them slipped away forever? "Keep quiet," Henry snapped, the harshness of his command cutting through the darkness. The man was instinctively protective of his own skin, and George could feel the menace lurking just inches away. One sharp gasp broke the silence, a breathless sound of recognition or fear. Who's there?" someone stammered. Suddenly, a flicker like a dying candle's light flared to life. It illuminated ghostly shadows dancing across the walls as emergency lights kicked in, painting the scene in shades of eerie red. George squinted, trying to make sense of the shapes around him. "Get the hell away from him!" Karen yelled, rushing toward George. Her silhouette wavered under the dim emergency glow, but a sense of determination radiated from her voice. "No!" Mark shouted, his voice rising in a panic. The truth has to stay buried. What are you scared of? George yelled back, adrenaline surging through him. There was no turning back now. He couldn't afford to waste this opportunity. A fist slammed against the table, shaking its contents. You really don't know what you're dealing with, Henry hissed, darkness suddenly creeping back into his voice. You think this is just a corporate affair. This is bigger than you can imagine. Before George could respond, the stranger shifted, stepping closer, a silhouette within the shadows. Do you really think those executives will protect you? They are not here for you, George. His tone was a cold whisper, and it sent a chill crackling up George's spine. They are here to cover their own tracks. And then, with a flick of the stranger's wrist, the lights flickered fully on. George shielded his eyes, squinting against the harsh glare. As the brightness settled, he realized the executives' faces were twisted with something darker than confusion, fear mingling with something more predatory. They weren't here to listen, they were here to silence him and protect their empire. George, don't. Karen pleaded, stepping in front of him, her face etched with determination and fear. But it was too late. He locked eyes with the executive closest to him, a woman with sharp features and an intensity that could freeze fire. I have proof, he said, voice rising above the fray, conviction spilling from his lips like wildfire. Proof of everything. The lies, the manipulation, the threats. I won't let you intimidate me. Your proof will mean nothing when you're out of the picture, Henry sneered, stepping back, his figure darkening the doorway. Was he going to make a move? George felt the air tighten around him like a noose threatening to pull him under if he didn't pivot quickly. The moment hung in balance, palpable like the steel of a knife about to plunge. The executives blinked, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. They weren't the only ones unsure now. George's breath came in ragged gasps as the stakes grew profoundly dire. Then, a hollow rumble echoed, a sound no one expected. The walls trembled. What was happening? An earthquake. Get down. Karen shouted as the floor quaked beneath them. Items began to tumble from shelves, chaos reigniting with furious speed. George spotted a beam of light pierce through the area, a tiny window to freedom. He turned to Karen, urgency electrifying his nerves. We have to go. Now? But as they raced towards the exit, an ominous voice called from behind them, dripping with contempt. You really think you can escape? Would they find a way to break free, or was this just the beginning of a danger they hadn't even begun to comprehend? The shaking subsided, leaving a heavy silence in its wake, punctuated only by George's ragged breaths. He glanced at Karen, the worry etched deep into her features. We have to. A loud crash erupted behind them, sending George's heart racing again. The executives had started moving, their frantic whispers fueling the tension in the air. Fear was morphing into desperation, as they rushed to pick up papers and phones that had scattered across the floor. Each motion sent a warning signal through George's body. Go! Mark yelled from the corner, his eyes wide with panic. Out the back. But Henry's voice boomed again, commanding and unyielding. Don't let them through. His hand reached into his suit jacket, and suddenly, everyone froze. That sudden shift, the sheer danger in the air, made George's blood run cold. He couldn't let fear paralyze him now. You won't silence me. He screamed, his voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. Suddenly, the low hum of a siren echoed in the distance, growing louder. The emergency lights flickered ominously, casting a ghastly glow on the executive faces, revealing the raw panic swirling within them. It was a race against time. George. We need to take cover. Karen grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the fray. Her nails dug into his skin, and he felt a strange warmth alongside the fear coursing through him. "Where?" he shouted back, glancing at the doorway, where shadows seemed to stretch, like living extensions of dread, growing closer. "We can't stay here." They what?" Karen interjected, fear twisting her expression. "Hurt us." "They already have." The siren wailed, as if it was bringing with it the weight of their fate, something final, something inevitable. The executives were arguing, their voices rising in a cacophony of fear and anger, but for George, clarity struck like lightning. "The elevator." He gestured toward the glass doors that led to the stairwell. "We can use it. It might lead us outside." Before Karen could respond, George sprinted toward the door. The sound of heels against marble and frantic breaths filled the room, as he could feel Karen close behind him. The moment his hand reached for the elevator button, a sharp shout rang out. "Don't let them escape." George's heart dropped. Too late. He hit the button with a wild pulse in his veins, and the metal doors slid open, revealing a small space that felt like a promise of chance. "Get in," he urged. They burst inside, the metal closing them off from the chaos, but as the doors shut, he caught sight of Henry's eyes, furious and alive with something dangerous. It was a glimpse of fury that sent shivers down his spine, accompanied by a chilling realization, if they could trap them in here, would it end the chase? Or was it a trap of their own? Suddenly, the elevator jolted. The lights flickered violently. Panic surged as they plummeted downward, the sensation of freefall rattling them both. "What is happening?" Karen screamed, her voice high with fear. "It's malfunctioning," George shouted, gripping the railing. Just when they thought they couldn't descend any further, the elevator screeched to a halt. Darkness swallowed them again, pulling George back into that suffocating silence. A pit formed in his stomach. This instant over a soft hiss reached his ears. Something else was lurking in the dark. A new danger. And would they be ready to face whatever awaited them when those doors opened again? What awaited them once the lights came back on? The sudden quiet pressed in, heavy and oppressive. George's pulse hammered in his ears. "What was that?" he whispered, barely able to contain the tremor in his voice. The hiss had felt almost alive, as if the darkness itself was taunting them. "I don't know," Karen replied, her voice shaky, barely above a whisper. "But we need to get out of here." He reached for the buttons, but the panel was unresponsive, dead like the space around them. They were trapped in this dark metallic coffin, with only uncertainty to keep them company. Did they disable it? Karen's fear became palpable, a live wire that zapped between them. George shook his head, straining to listen beyond the sound of their breaths. The hiss returned, sharper this time, punctuated by a faint whirring sound. "Can you hear that?" George asked. His eyes darted around, searching for any sign of light or movement. "Yeah, but it's coming from what?" Karen's eyes widened as the sound morphed into a low growl. George pressed his back against the elevator wall, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "We need a plan, Karen." His voice was steadier than he felt. Suddenly, the lights flickered on, blinding white, flooding the small space. They had planned to be safely inside, but now felt vulnerable under the harsh illumination. Instinctively, George shielded his eyes. When he finally adjusted, he gasped. Not far from them, at the far corner of the small elevator, a shadow loomed, vaguely familiar yet twisted, a grotesque reflection of his own fears. It was a figure, dark and amorphous, pulsing and shifting like smoke. "George!" Karen gripped his arm hard, her nails digging in again. Terror washed over her face. "Stay behind me," he barked, stepping forward, though dread coiled around him like a snake. The figure straightened, revealing hollow eyes that bore into him with an intimidating intensity. "Help, help me!" a voice slithered from the shadow, distorted and echoing as if multiple voices were colliding into one. The urgency in the voice tugged at something inside George, a spark of empathy despite the fear churning in his gut. "What are you? What do you want?" he demanded, his voice an uneasy mix of defiance and curiosity. "Release me from this place," it rasped. "I can guide you, but you must listen." George hesitated. "How do we know it's not a trick?" There was a heartbeat of silence before the figure surged closer, and a realization hit him. It wasn't just fear he saw in its eyes, it was sorrow. "We don't have time," Karen urged, her grip tightening. "Tell us how." George strained to keep his voice steady, the ghostly figure rising with a shudder, as if drawn by his resolve. "Find the key in the truth," it whispered, then began to dissolve back into nothingness, the last flicker of its presence a soft glow dancing in the space around them. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, plunging them back into darkness. Panic surged anew. "What does that mean? What truth?" "George!" Karen shouted, her voice fracturing with fear. "What if this is all a trap? We can't trust it." But dread was morphing into something else, an urge to understand the mystery hidden behind the shadows. A key. The truth. Could they really escape by unearthing something buried deep? Before he could answer, the elevator jolted violently again, sending them both off balance. "Hold on." As the metallic creaks began to echo, George gritted his teeth. They had no choice but to uncover what lay ahead. Clarity cut through him. Solving this enigma might be their only chance of survival. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together," he promised. Would they find a way to break free from the looming doom? Or was this just the beginning of a darker descent? The elevator shuddered again, a violent earthquake that rattled their bones. George barely found his footing as Karen screamed, her terror snapping him back to reality like an electric shock. They had lost sight of the figure completely, but its refrain hung like a ghost between them. "Find the key in the truth." "What do we do?" Karen cried, her breath hitching in her throat. "What truth?" "The walls are closing in." "Start looking." George barked. "We need to find anything, a clue, a way out, something." He rummaged through the small space, feeling along the metal walls, searching for any sign of a panel, a hidden latch, or a crack that might lead them to safety. His palm slid against the cool surface, heart racing with each pulse of his anxiety. The darkness around them deepened, wrapping itself tighter, threatening to smother them whole. Karen joined the search, her fingers trembling as they traced the seams of the elevator. "It has to be here, somewhere," she said breathlessly, eyes darting everywhere. Then, a soft click echoed through the confined space. They both froze. "What was that?" George whispered, every hair on his neck standing on end. "It came from over there, near the floor," Karen pointed, and together they moved closer to the corner where the darkness seemed thickest. As they crouched, that same low growl rumbled again, rattling through the air, only this time it was accompanied by an unsettling gurgling sound, like something lost and angry. "Get ready," George warned, his heart pounding furiously. Just as they braced themselves, a section of the elevator floor began to shift, and suddenly, a metal grate rose before them, gaping wide like a hungry mouth. The light flickered back on, illuminating the opening. George's pulse quickened as he leaned in closer. "What's down there?" "I don't know, but it's our only option." Karen's voice quivered, a blend of dread and hope. With an impulsive leap of faith, George gripped the edges of the grate. "I'll go first. Stay close, and don't let go." He clambered over the edge, and felt cold air rush up to greet him. It smelled of dampness, decay, and secrets long buried. "George, be careful." He dropped down into the abyss, the hollow thud reverberating through his bones. He landed unsteadily, but managed to keep his footing. The darkness engulfed him, swallowing him whole, but the faint glow from the elevator above still flickered like a beacon. "Come on. It's safe. I think." He yelled back up. The fear knotted his gut, but curiosity drove him further into the unknown. Karen hesitated, glancing up at the shrinking light. "Okay, here I come." As she joined him, they stumbled forward, the grey expanse stretching infinitely in front of them. Strange symbols etched into the walls began to materialize around them. "What are these?" Karen whispered, tracing her fingers along the strange markings. "Maybe it's a map or some kind of clue." George's voice trembled with doubt. Each glyph held an ominous weight, and the low growls persisted, vibrating through the very air. Karen's voice quavered, pulling him from the mantras of fear. "Do you hear that?" In that moment, the growls grew louder, merging with the echoes of their hearts pounding. "It's not just a sound, it feels alive," George gasped, dread clawing at his chest. The glow behind them flickered out completely, leaving only their breaths and the ominous noises. George's mind raced as instincts kicked in. "We need to keep moving," he urged, his voice steadier than the dizzying panic within. What if the truth they sought was even darker than the abyss around them? Did they truly want to know? As they pressed forward, a shadow materialized in front of them, blocking their path. Hollow eyes glimmered from the pitch black, mirroring the same sorrow that had haunted George earlier. "Do you dare to find the truth?" The figure hissed, its voice slicing through the silence. "What truth?" George shouted, defiance mingling with fear. The figure leaned closer, whispers swirling. "The key lies where your memories fade." The weight of those words settled in the air like a thick fog, chilling and elusive. George's heart raced. What memories? Just then, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The elevator was descending again, but they had no way of knowing what awaited them below. "Wait!" Karen cried, and in the shadowy embrace of uncertainty, they stood on the brink of revelation. Would the truth set them free or enslave them forever? The abyss around them trembled, vibrating with secrets, as they stood at the edge of the unknown. "What do you mean where my memories fade?" George's voice rang out, tinged with desperation. The shadowy figure writhed subtly, its eyes boring into his but providing no answers, only a haunting challenge. "Find what you've buried, George." The words echoed as if the darkness itself were alive and taunting him. Memories flashed before him, faces of his colleagues, moments of triumph and despair, all embedded deep within his soul. "What is the truth you want me to face?" Before he could digest the implications, the shadows deepened around them, each heartbeat pulsing through the dim corridor. "It's in the past, it haunts your present, and if you do not confront it, you will be consumed," the figure urged, darkness thickening around its form. "George, we need to move." Karen grabbed his arm as terror gripped her features. "Now?" Her urgency tapped into wholly American instincts. Survival, action, instinct. "Wait!" he shouted back, trying to shake loose of the grip of both the shadows and the moment. It felt pivotal, monumental. "I don't want to face whatever past is hidden here. They could find us," Karen exclaimed, glancing back toward the path they'd ventured from. The low growl resonated again, growing nearer, a sinister reminder of the threat behind them. Without another word, George stepped forward, guided by persistence. Side by side, they trudged deeper into the labyrinthine dark, hearts drumming in unison. With every shadow flickering around them, George felt anxiety rise, wrestling with his determination to fight back. Suddenly, a flicker of light appeared ahead, illuminating a door covered in rust and thick cobwebs. "Do you see that?" he breathed, hope igniting in his chest. "Yes?" Karen whispered urgently. "If it's a way out." But as they approached, George hesitated again. "What if it leads to their trap?" "No risk, no reward," Karen argued. Her voice held an undeniable fire, a spark that he needed at that moment. They needed each other more than ever. Together, they pushed against the door, splintered wood creaking under pressure. A burst of grey light flooded in, revealing a room lined with old photographs and files stacked high. "This is it," George exclaimed, stepping inside. Here lived fragments of his life, sealed behind this door, a repository of memories, laughter, betrayal, and joy that had shaped him. He immediately recognized faces, colleagues they'd once laughed with, friends who'd turned into foes. "Every file tells a story," he murmured, running a finger over the dusty folders. "Let us just grab what we need and run," Karen insisted, pulling him away from nostalgic reverie. But as he glanced at a file slotted halfway down the stack, the title read "Plans for the Future, Employee Exits." His heart dropped. Inside were the names of employees, including his, paired with sinister notes outlining their elimination strategies, operational dates, methods of sabotage. It struck him like a fist to the gut. This wasn't just corporate greed, it was a full-featured conspiratorial nightmare. Sweat dripped from his brow as the memory of past trust intertwined with betrayal. "They wanted me gone this whole time. They played me like a fool," he whispered, realization wrapping tight around him. "George," Karen cried, "we can't waste more time. Let us take the evidence and leave." The threat loomed now, rivaling the fear of moving deeper into their past. Panic swelled inside his chest like a balloon ready to burst. "Wait, there's something else." He ripped open another folder marked Policies for Disposal and revealed something far darker, photos of witnesses being silenced, confirming the full scope of Henry's plan to secure a future built on nothing but manipulation. His stomach twisted at the thought. "They'd stop at nothing," he choked out, gritting his teeth against the raw emotions rising. How many lives were ruined at the hands of these men? "George, we have to expose this." Karen's urgency snapped him back to the present. "We need to make copies and show it to someone who will listen," she urged, each word pressing them onward. But just as he turned to gather what they needed, the growl emerged again from the shadows. This time, it came with footsteps urgent and deliberate. "They've found us. Quick! To the exit!" Karen shouted, adrenaline coursing between them as they surged through back towards the shadowy corridor. But the doorway collapsed, thundering behind them as they rushed forward. "They are blocking our path," George shouted, heart racing. "We want to make it." In that moment of chaos, clarity washed over him. "We can't just run. We have to fight together." They found themselves back at the elevator, the door still ajar, beckoning them into the unknown. "Stay with me, whatever happens," he urged, and she nodded, steeling herself. With a surge of defiance, they charged straight into the cavernous elevator, fingers clutching folders like swords ready for war. Karen hit the button furiously, and the doors slid shut just as muffled voices erupted outside. In the small, tight space, they shared only one last glance, a look of determination that spoke volumes. "Together," he reassured her. "Together," she echoed firmly, and before they could contemplate doubt, the elevator car jolted, ascending into uncertainty. As it rose, George felt the weight of the truth they carried. It was heavy but worth it. The letters stacked between them glowed with hope for all he'd experienced. The honesty of their journey sparked anew. This was not just about survival, it was about freedom. When they emerged, the darkness would dissipate, the light would spill with revelations. To expose what was hidden, confront the shadows, they would shed the truth onto the world outside. And just before the doors opened, George rested his hand atop Karen's, a silent pledge that love and loyalty ignited the fight with every breath. They were no longer prisoners to their fears or the manipulations of others. They were forged by the fire of their resolve. As the elevator came to a stop, he inhaled, steeling himself for the battle ahead, eager to step into a world that wouldn't stifle their voices ever again. Are you ready to join George in the fight against betrayal? Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about what happened next. Your insights matter. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Remember, the next adventure is just around the corner.